What if the person that you once cared for became the person that you are? Today we're talking about dementia, and not just from a clinical angle, we're hearing from someone who's lived it from both sides. My guest, Michael Booth, supported his mum through young onset dementia, and then in his mid-40s was diagnosed with Alzheimer's himself. Instead of disappearing, he's chosen to speak, write and support others, and his message is simple but powerful. Dementia is not the end. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. It genuinely is a pleasure to have you on and finally get to do this podcast after a few conversations.
Thank you.
So what I want to jump in with is there's a lot of people who, when we're looking at Google searches, they ask the question, what is it like to live with dementia? When you think about your life now, how would you describe what it actually feels like on a day-to-day basis?
That's a very interesting question to start with. Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Andy. Nice to see you again. Many people try to put down living well with dementia. For me, living well is when I don't have it. That's all I can say on that one. It's challenging. Let's put it this way. No day, no hour is the same. I can be feeling fine and pretty good cognitively, balance-wise, etc., and then suddenly not. And then I struggle to find my words. I can't move around so easy. So it's challenging. It's challenging for me to live with it because I can actually feel what it feels like. It's actually a very strange feeling. You can feel yourself deteriorating, put it that way, which is quite strange because you know what you were capable of doing, you know what you could do, you know how well you could do certain things, and now you struggle with them. So it becomes challenging on a daily basis. But I have to say, caring for my mom, who also passed away from dementia, I think it's harder for the carer. I think it's harder for my wife than it is for me. You never get to switch off. I can wind down, I can zone out, I can go to bed, etc. But for her, she's constantly checking, constantly helping me, doing things. I mean, she's had to retire now. She retired at the age of 51 in order to care for me and to help me. So that's no age to be retiring, and of course, it affects you financially. So I think the answer to that question then is challenging daily.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing to understand. Like, obviously, we've tried to schedule this conversation before, and you had as you described it, a kind of, I'm having a tough day. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't quite understand as well, that it's not a case of it's one continuous state.
No. Many people, when they picture dementia in the late stage. So you're sitting in your chair, you're drooling type of thing, that's what people think about. What they forget is we've got to get to that stage. Our brain has got to decrease to that stage. And in between that, we've got to continue to live the best that we can and adapt to the challenges that we've got. And some days, some hours are better than others. Some days I can wake up feeling great. Other days I can't get out of bed. Because my legs just won't work. So it just depends also on the type of dementia that you've got, because let's not forget, different dementias attack different parts of your brain. And so it becomes challenging with personality challenges. You don't recognize your loved ones anymore as you progress. You forget names or where that person fits into your life. All of those things become quite challenging and quite daunting, really. And it's scary. But as much as people will say, yeah, it's okay. I mean, I heard one person say, oh, they wouldn't swap it for the world. But I don't think you're living it correctly if you are.
Yeah, I think obviously the journey is going to be very different from everybody, isn't it? And
exactly.
mindset approach, but also how the illness or the affects you on a day to day, and what you were to what you become on a day to day basis, I suppose.
Yeah, it also depends on how I react to it. I'm the type of guy who is always half full, but you'll get others who are always half empty. So I look for the positives. What can I still do? But you can't walk away from the fact of what you're losing. And sometimes you do go into that dark place, but you can't stay there, because if you do, that's a sure sign to depression and everything else. For me, you have to try stay as positive as you possibly can. And whatever means you've got to do that, be it music, gardening, hobbies, whatever, it doesn't really matter. If it takes you to a happy place, those are good things.
We'll definitely lead into that, because I know that's an important part of the book written and things like that, as far as that, focusing on what you can do rather than what you can't do and things like that. So now, you've already mentioned there, as far as you were a carer for your mum, Christine, is that right?
Yes, right.
Before your own diagnosis. Without going into tiny detail, but what stands out to you now, maybe knowing what you know now, about the time that you supported her?
I learned a lot on that journey, at the very beginning, because my granddad had dementia. He was in his 80s when he was diagnosed. At that point, I thought, like everybody else, dementia is just an age-related thing. You get it when you're old. It's expected. When my mom was eventually diagnosed, it took 4.5 years to get that diagnosis. She was, at the age of 50, then diagnosed at about 55. I couldn't understand why so young. So I'm the type of guy who I need to research everything about this thing. I want to know the best way that I could care. So I learned a lot about dementia. Little did I know it was going to serve me well later on. But I think for me it was the sheer ignorance of dementia that I had at that stage that really opened my eyes to it. That I had no idea that this thing was there, and how many different types, and how it affects people differently. And there's a lot to learn when you're trying to learn about dementia. And I think what stood out for me is that you have to try and understand the person's background, the type of person that they were, in order to care for them properly. It's not a matter of just putting somebody in a care home and doing things. You've really got to sit down and think about it, but you don't get time to switch off at all. It's one of those where it literally consumes your life, and that's just caring for it. It's really difficult, and of course, along with all that stress, then you've got the emotional stress, seeing your loved one go through all of this and trying to see how you can best help. It's challenging too, to say the least. It's really difficult. But I think just being there, trying to help the best we can. The most difficult decision was when we had to choose to a care home. That was, like most people, we said we will look after my mom as long as we can at home. We promised her that. And as far as I'm concerned, we stuck to it for as long as we possibly could. But it was still the most heart-wrenching thing you'll ever have to do. That was really stressful, and especially for my dad as well. That today I can still think about that, and it still haunts me. It's really hard to do.
Do you think that obviously going through that experience of supporting your mum has given you an additional form of empathy and understanding towards those around you? You spoke very selflessly a moment ago about that it affects those that caring for, and maybe affects them more than it affects you in many ways. Do you think it was that experience that kind of gave you that perspective?
I think so, yeah, because now I've got the empathy. I've walked in those shoes. I know what it's like to be on the other side. It's also given me the alternative side of things, in that I know now where I went wrong with my mom, because now I'm living it, and now I understand a lot more. So it's given me that dual perspective. So I'm able to, which is why I'm able to speak about it so openly and so frankly about things is because I know the impact it's having on both sides.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard you speak, Michael, and it was, incredibly informative and that dual perspective is definitely meaningful for what you add into it. So when your diagnosis came, especially so soon after losing your mum as well, I believe it was a very short distance, what did that moment mean to you emotionally?
That was like a kick in the stomach. I did not see that coming. I put it down to stress. I just thought, I'm losing my mom. My mom we were in palliative care at that time. And it was actually the medical staff that were explaining everything about the palliative care to my mom that picked up on it and said, look, let's just get checked to be sure. Well, as it turns out, they were right. But, I just put everything down to stress because that's what I thought it was. It's very emotive. It's very confusing time. You don't know if you're making the right decisions. It's just everything is going on in your head all at once. And at that time, I'm still working full time. I've got a son, so I had to care for him at home. My wife, it was also working. So it was everything all at once, and it was really stressful. So to get then the diagnosis, which was about 6 months after my mom passed away, the eventual diagnosis came through, and then it was just before lockdown. So it was a difficult thing when the nurse came around and told us that it was definitely a mixed Alzheimer's that I had, and it was quite a difficult day. That.
So was there symptoms that they picked up on that flagged that for them, or was it more a case of because of the genetic potential vulnerability?
No, I was asking the same questions. And plus also, I was just talking to a nurse. I said, I was going to the actual meeting and I went totally blank. I couldn't remember where I was going.
Oh, right.
And so I had to actually stop the car and pull over. So I was a little bit late. So I was just explaining it to them. But then I kept on asking the same questions. My speech was very labored at that point. But again, I thought I was stressed out. She said, look, just because my granddad had it, because my mom's got it, let's just double check. Let's go for some scans, do a MMSE, one of those memory cognitive testings, and see. The memory cognitive testing I struggled with. I do not wish anybody to have to go through that. It is one of the most embarrassing tests you'll ever have to do. Because you sit there and you do this test and you're like, I should know this. I know how to, I know the answer to this and I just got to find it. It is, what's going on? And then you go for the scans, and the first scan came back inconclusive. So I had to go for a SPECT scan,
Right.
which is a more resolute scan, a higher definition that can see the amyloids and the tau's and all of that build up. And that's what then diagnosed it with everything together. So I ended up having a full neurological workup.
Right. Okay. You mentioned that you've got a mixed form of Alzheimer's. Do you know what those different labels are that they've given to that?
Yeah, well, generally Alzheimer's is, you get different types of Alzheimer's. There's 5 or 6 different types of Alzheimer's. I have LPA and PCA together, but at the same time, it's also affected the frontal part of the brain, so the FTD. The only part of the brain that actually did not show anything through the scans was the hippocampus,
which is a typical area that's affected.
It starts. That was the only thing that actually wasn't affected. It is starting to now. I'm starting to lose a lot of memory now. But it's everything else that's the parietal lobes and all that has all been affected.
Yeah, you mentioned sort of difficulties with speech, difficulties with movement are the main things that you have challenges with. Is that the case? Yeah.
And also depth perception as well.
Right.
Various colors look the same. So if you put white on white, I can't see it. So because of the depth perception, my eyes can see. I've had them tested. nothing really wrong with my eyes, although he says wearing glasses, but that's for close-up stuff.
Yep.
But it's the eyes can see, but the brain can't convert what it is that it's seeing. I mean, it's quite clever what the eye and everything does. So it's like with PCA, one of the reasons for that, which is post-cortical atrophy.
Yep.
One of the main problems with that is as it progresses is actually that part of the brain that converts what you see into what you understand can totally switch off. So people actually see upside down.
Right. Okay.
Because your eyes see upside down.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Flips it over in your brain.
And then
yeah.
your brain converts it.
Mm-hmm.
But if your brain can't convert it, you actually start to see upside down. So it's quite daunting when people have that later on in life.
And I think that sometimes gets mistaken for memory in ways, isn't it? If I'm looking at a cup, it may be that I know the word for cup. That's not the problem with the memory. It's the fact that I don't recognize what that is in that moment. So the memory of the word is there, but the memory of all the understanding or comprehension of the object is not there, which isn't memory based, but it's perceived as memory based still, isn't it?
There's different types of memory, isn't it? Because you've got different types of the brain or different areas of the brain that really does various things. The hippocampus is basically the area where it stores more of your facial recognition, your long-term memories, all that type of thing. But then when you've got the amygdala and a few other parts of the brain, they're the ones that like object recognition. What is that object for? So you might be able to recognize, like you say, what the object is, but what you can't do is place what it's used for. And so you look at this object and think, right, or I can see I'm looking for my cup, but I can't find it, even though it's right in front of me. So it's which is often why we go for brighter colors, because then the memory again uses a different part of the brain, and the color can then identify, right, that is what it is for. So even though I might not recognize the object, I can recognize the color. So it all depends how it's affected you, really, and that's why it's such a minefield, dementia. When it comes to care and things that everybody one size fits all, it really can't.
Well, that kind of leads me into this next question, because you often hear families, maybe particularly families, talking about it feels like the person is kind of disappearing. So from your perspective, what do people misunderstand about identity and dementia?
Is the person disappearing? It's quite a difficult one, really, to answer that, because in theory, yes, the person is disappearing. But it's the brain that's disappearing. It's the brain's ability to understand, to interpret, to project what that person is. And so from that point of view, the person is disappearing. But obviously, the person is still in front of you. There's no change from that perspective. But the person's ability to comprehend, to have the cognitive ability to interact, to show love, because you've got to remember that love, hate are from the same parts of the brain. So they can often get confused. You can have the chemical imbalances between the one side of the brain to the other that can all get mixed up. I've seen people with dementia go from being right-handed to left-handed.
Right, really.
And suddenly they start writing with their left hand, and others can't write at all. It's just the way the brain is a fascinating piece of work, but it is, it is a hard one, because the person, as much as everybody says that the person is still there and everything, it's true, but it's also not true, because the person doesn't have the ability to comprehend anymore as it's progressing. And we are now talking about late stage. Of course, we've got to build up to that point. Anything you can do pre that to try and delay or help is great, but there's no science behind whether it will work or not. You just got to try. You really do. But there's nothing else you can do about it. It's when something is gone. What really frustrates me is when you see people trying to force somebody else to do something. So a person living with dementia, they're trying to force them to do a jigsaw puzzle. No, you must keep going. You got to try. When that ability's gone, it's not coming back. You can try and do different things to adapt, but it's like trying to get somebody who's lost a leg to try and just get up and walk. It's without the adaptive tools, it's not going to happen. And sometimes your brain can adapt. It's true. Is it possible to learn new things with dementia? Yes, you can, and you can still remember them. But it all depends on how far down your journey you are in order for that to actually happen. But as things progress, as you deteriorate, then, yeah, technically you lose yourself because you're losing. Your brain goes to half its size almost by the time. So you can imagine that at full capacity, great, but now half a capacity. And then once it starts to hit the brain stem, which everybody forgets about, the brain stem is what controls your breathing, your hunger, your temperature, your basic necessities of life. That is controlled by your brainstem. Once the disease gets there, then that's when you forget to eat, you forget to drink, you feel cold all this time. That's generally palliative stage. Then it's not after that. And that's speaking from experience of what I've seen people go through, no matter what type of dementia you got at that stage. So it's quite a difficult question, that one, actually, that you just posed there. Is the person losing themselves? Some will argue no, the person is always there. But if the brain is going, if you think about it biologically, not socially, because psychologically you want to try and say, well, the person is still there. But if that brain is deteriorating all the way down to the point that it no longer operates, it can no longer identify, it can no longer have those feelings, is the person still there?
Yeah.
When all it is basic instinct after that. It's difficult.
It is. And I think it is a nuanced question. It's nice to hear you reflect on it in such an open way, because I think there is the two sides. One is looks at it purely biologically and kind of goes, well, no, there is that, they're going. But there's also this spiritual, emotional side that is, there's still the person, there's still there's things there that hold true.
Yeah,
it was something interesting.
You are still living. You are still the same person. You are still, but you just don't act, and you can't comprehend everything the way you used to do it.
Yeah.
Which is why I say I think it becomes harder for the carer, because at that point the person lives, they exist. But the carer then, the person loving you and looking after you, they've still got all their faculties. They're still able to do things, and that's difficult to comprehend and to try and see what is right, what is wrong. Which is why I say it's harder for the person at that point. And you do question everything you do.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm working on, I've got a new book coming out next year called The Adaptive Caregiver Model, which refers to exactly this. And it's we do this journey naturally when we're kind of supporting a child in the development, that you kind of just appreciate where they are. Like you don't go, well, you should be reading Shakespeare by now. And as you said, there's a point where, yes, you want to have high expectations, but at the same time, allow them to be where they actually are, rather than try and hold them where you think they should be or where your ultimate goal would be. And I think that's a hard thing. It's a reverse journey that caregivers find difficult.
Right, because what you would generally do is, which is why a lot of people start to think that you're going back to childhood, but that is actually a misconception.
Yeah.
Yes, your memories go back. In that it's quite possible I go back and I see my son still as a child rather than now a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
So it is possible. And my mom didn't recognize my dad because she viewed him as younger, and he's lost most of his hair now. So she couldn't recognize him, but she always recognized me, funny enough. I was always the same. And yet my sister, she only pictured as a baby. So it depends on where you go back to. Now, if you think about the one of the best ways to analyze this is the bookcase analogy that the Alzheimer's Society uses. Their analogy is that your brain is your bookcase, so to speak. Your emotions are there. They never change. Your emotions are always accurate. So I can picture a face. I may not remember that person. I don't know their name, but I know the emotions that person makes me feel. So that's your hate and love. I can get along with you, or I really don't like you. There's no black or white. It's and a grey areas. So what you do is as those memories, which are the books, start to fall off the shelf, generally you end up around about, based on research that they've done, you end up around about early 30s to mid 20s. So it's not childhood that you go back to. So that is a misconception. But you are right in your analogy in that with a child, we try to keep things as realistic as possible for them, so at their level that they're at, but we set high goals. So we ask them, okay, so that's where you're at, let's stretch a little bit, because that's how we learn, that's how we improve. With the reverse, it actually becomes quite frustrating, because now you're starting to go into areas where, okay, I've lost that ability to do something. Let's try do it a different way. So, I don't know, maybe I can't do a jigsaw puzzle anymore, but could I color? Could I paint? Still keep the mind active. Great. But once that ability goes, then what? Then you've got to try look for something else. But to try and keep persisting and trying forcing that person to reach higher, there's just no point. There's no point. What it comes down to with a person living with dementia that I have learned is about stress control. Keeping the stress levels as low as possible for you and your family helps the person to live better. Living better means that the symptoms are as low. As soon as you start to increase those stress levels, I know, then your brain, well, it's difficult for most humans to handle stress. So you can imagine you get frustrated, you get angry. I lose the ability to sometimes control then what comes out of my mouth and what I say or what I do. At that point, you get a lash out, which is what they would call challenging behavior. But, you know, it's not so much challenging, it's misunderstood communication a lot of times. And so I'm lashing out because you're trying to force me to do something that I just can't do at the moment. So, yeah, trying to reach those higher levels is just makes no sense.
Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behaviour that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behaviour can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later wishing for an umbrella. What if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict and respond and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviours that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behaviour. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviours in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today. Now, I know you spoke about this when I watched you give a talk at a conference. You said that before, you said before that it can feel like people treat you differently once they know that you have dementia. How does that show up in real life, in conversations, in everyday interactions?
I can tell you the example. First of all, once I was diagnosed, I lost a lot of my friends. Friends who I thought were going to stand by me, I explained the situation and never heard back from them ever till today. Gone. As though overnight I've suddenly changed to this person who can't do anything. Strange. But then I found other people who were just acquaintances who have stepped up and they've become good friends now. So yeah, some people step up to the challenge, others just walk away from it. I find the worst is medical people, clinicians will always talk to my wife rather than me, as though I can't make a decision. Now, I know I have cognitive capacity or incapacity, depending on how they put it. So I know that I wouldn't be able to sign certain forms because then they question my capacity to do so. However, you can still talk to me. I'm talking to you, fine. So why can somebody not talk to me? Yes, I can have somebody there who will help me make decisions, who will make sure I'm doing the right thing, that I'm not making a rash decision or something, but still talk to me. I'm here. And it's things like that people suddenly treat you as though you've lost everything all of a sudden. And again, it becomes because in our brains, we've got this fixed thing. When we see somebody on TV with dementia or whatever, it's like they've already reached the final stages. It's like, but I haven't reached there yet. Why are you picturing me that way now? And that's where the problem really comes in. It's stigma and bias that creates those challenges. But unfortunately, we have to live with it. And so that's mostly how it becomes relevant, is people just treat you differently.
And it's a real shame that, say, the people you'll have to interact with the most, the clinicians, are the ones who are sometimes the worst at it. So I know that many carers and family members worry about saying like the wrong thing. And I think that's the same with any, maybe that's a challenge for people you thought were your friends or thought would be there. Maybe that's a barrier that they experience. What kind of responses or comments actually feel supportive to you, and what kind of things really don't?
What I prefer is somebody to ask the question.
Yeah.
Rather than just go ahead and do something, because sometimes it comes from the most meaningful of places, but then it makes you feel like a child type of thing. But rather than just ask, I don't mind. If you want to assist me, ask. I don't mind it anyway. If I fumble or make mistakes on my words or I get a date wrong or whatever, does it really matter? So it's just a matter of thinking about, if you're going to step in and alter somebody's conversation or anything, I always, like with my wife, we've had a long conversation about this, and I said, look, just think about things before you correct me. Is it going to make any difference? Is it that important that it needs to be corrected? If it is, yes, then fine, do so. But if it really doesn't add anything to it, and I've got a date out by a month or whatever, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So what? If it's just in general conversation, it's not going to make any difference. But I think that is probably, to me, one of the most irritating, is when people always correct me, or because I've got something slightly wrong or my memory is a little bit more fuzzy on that one. Like I'll say I did something yesterday when actually it was last week, for example. It doesn't really make any difference. That gets me hacked off a little bit. However, if people want to support me and they do things out of the goodness of their heart and that, I try to look past how condescending sometimes it can be. And I try to look at it, they mean well. So I will thank them for it. And if need be, I'll try educate them a little bit politely. And so that they don't feel that they are being adjusted, so to speak, or corrected in their thinking. But always thankful for what they're trying to do. So I always try to ask people, just put yourself in my shoes and think about what you would like. And then act accordingly. That makes a very big difference of how would you like it if I treated you that way? and you were in my shoes. And I think trying to think about that and try to show empathy rather than apathy makes a big difference.
A common question that I know people ask is, can you still enjoy life after a dementia diagnosis? How would you answer that from your own experience?
It's going to depend really on the person. I've seen a lot of people who struggle with it. They go into depression, they don't go out, it takes over their life. At that point, I think that then they need help. Where the clinicians really go wrong is after diagnosis, what you don't get to do is talk to anybody about this, to get a better understanding about it, to get the education. You're given a load of leaflets that mean absolutely nothing. I mean, at 46, when I was diagnosed, I was given leaflets about care homes. Really? Funeral directors were one of them. Who gives that out at 46? You just think, right, that's ignorance all around. But because you have a lack of understanding, you can actually start to believe all of this. That's it now. It's you're not going to be able to do anything anymore. I found peer support to be really good. Speaking to people who actually have the diagnosis, or carers, speaking to carers, because that way you can actually get to see, which is why I promote myself and what I do and talk to people so much, is because I want them to see that actually you can still live the best that you want to live. Your dreams and aspirations don't have to die. You can move them forward. You can try and do things. You can adapt. You can do everything you possibly can in order to fulfill the dreams that you want to achieve. Will some of those dreams have to be put aside? Yes, because you've got to be realistic about things. Some things you're not going to be able to achieve, but it doesn't mean you can't be happy. Do I get sad? Yes. Do I get depressed sometimes and feel down? Yes. And I think anybody who says they don't is lying, because you can imagine being in my shoes and how you would feel. It's challenging. Those are difficult days that you get, and sometimes you can get caught up in your own head. But I still think you can be happy. It's about looking at your past and recognizing what you could do, but also at the same time recognizing what you can do, looking into the future to plan ahead, but not staying there. Always try to live now. Try to live if you can focus on now, you can be happy. And I think that's the best thing that you can do. From my experience, anyway.
I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice for anybody, not just anybody living with dementia. I think that's just generally, most anxiety comes from things that we're worried about that happened in the past, or what may or might not happen in the future. And so I think there's a piece with acceptance of where you are, isn't there? As far as one of the things that what makes a difference to you on a good day. What things really help you feel more yourself, more settled, or more connected to the people around you?
Smiling often helps. When somebody's nice and warm and everything, then that's really great. If somebody comes in agitated, I can pick up straight away. I've noticed that I become more sensitive to emotion. So the better the emotion, the better I will respond. If you come in and you're more aggressive and you're having a bad day, I'm going to pick up on it, and that's what you're going to get in return. So I've noticed that quite a bit. So having a better emotion around me is always good. But for me, music plays a vital part. I've created. I've got I think it's nearly 2,000 songs or something in one playlist of music that I've grown up with, that I know, that I recognize. But I try to keep the music upbeat, that's happy. I don't tend to listen to or play, even though I might like them, like the Adele songs, the breakup songs. I try to stay away from those because all they're going to do is make you feel down. So even though I might have them on a separate playlist, which will have all of my music, I've got ones that will just, when I'm feeling down, I can put on, and because music connects through the amygdala to the memory. So you're able to resonate with music to how you were feeling at the time that you did that. So it can transport you to better places, but it also has the ability to just lift you up. So if you allow it to, then do that. Hobbies. I've gone back to a hobby that I used to do a long time ago. But I stopped for very many years, which was drawing and painting. So I've gone back to that a little bit. Now, at the moment, it's helpful, especially now in winter, because I can't get out in the garden. I love to do gardening, and I never did gardening before. After my diagnosis, I suddenly found when I lost my job that I've got like time on my hands, and I had a garden outside, and I just thought, why not? And I actually found that I enjoy it. It's just a place to be with yourself, to think, to I suppose to meditate on things and to sort your brain out a little bit. It's one of those quiet times, and I enjoy that. I think accepting what you've got and trying to work around what it is a very good thing, first of all. But secondly, it gives you that peace of mind that, okay, you know what's coming, but it doesn't mean you can't live now. So whatever it is that takes you to a happy place, whatever it is that brings you joy, do as much as you can, but try different things. Just because you can't have the ability to do one, try another, so that you've got a wide range of things. But on saying that, I have found what gives me the peace of mind is because what I learned with my mom is we were ill prepared for what was to come. We all knew what was coming, but we didn't prepare for it. And by preparing, I mean, we didn't put, alter the place so that it was more declutter, and to look at the colors of the rooms. Was the lighting right? Was the bathroom right? Did we put in grab rails? We didn't look at anything like that. And what I have found now is that preparing and doing those things earlier than what you actually think pays off in the long run, because I get used to it. And that is one thing I try to advocate a lot of is prepare for your future, because it takes a lot of stress out of the carer, because suddenly they don't have to do all of those things. It's already done. So if you can bite your pride, and trust me, it does take some doing. If you can bite your pride and put some things in place that, you may not need right now, but you will or possibly need in the future, then rather prepare that now so it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
I think that's great advice, Michael. And I was I offered my some free support to a family, a friend of mine. He said his mum was in the early stages of diagnosis, and we sort of, it was a bit of a conference. I offered my free support. I'll come in or send my team in. We'll do some one-to-ones. We'll come in and do a home kind of do some consultancy work, do an environmental assessment. But I think there's so much not known. So they were immediately going, well, yeah, we're looking at getting a new bathtub. And that's kind of what we're focused on, just making the bathroom accessible and mobility friendly. And so that's not really what we do. That's, what we're looking at is color schemes. It's looking at, the design of the place, looking at where doors might be that actually could affect a person's ability to navigate. How can people find things behind cupboards? Is there certain doors that don't need to be there anymore? How do they know which is a hot and cold tap if it doesn't say it on there? Things that you wouldn't think about that affect people on a day-to-day, but they were resistant to that because I don't think they were ready.
Yeah, and that's the problem, you see, it's a lack of education of what's coming. And if they realize, especially if you know what type of dementia they've got, then you know what path roughly they're going to take. So you know what could well be a problem later on, and you can prepare for that. You can't hide behind ignorance anymore. There's so much information out there now. So preparing keeps your stress levels down. Like I said, that's most important. So preparing things it'll help. And bathtubs, I can tell you now, is the worst thing you can put in place. You want to be taking your bathtubs out and putting a walk-in shower in. The less stress, the less trip you can have. Most accidents most falls either happen when you get first out of bed because you get up too quickly and you don't have the ability, your brain doesn't come around, and you end up on the floor, or in a bathroom. And generally getting out of a bath, you trip, you clip your foot, you go over, and 9 out of 10 times it ends up in a broken hip. So you really got to think about those type of things, whether you want to do it or not, and whether you're resistant to it and think, no, it's not needed at this moment in time. The quicker, the better.
Yeah. So you obviously wrote a book. So Dementia, You Are Not Alone. What moved you from just living this to deciding I need to put this down on paper and share it?
Actually, it was purely by accident. Okay. I sold my house because I had, in 1 year, I had 4 falls, resulting in 4 fractures of bones in my wrists and in my hand and in my foot. So, and that was simply because of the design of the house. It had stairs, there were stairs going into the garden, there were stairs going upstairs to the bedrooms, and it was, that depth perception of stairs and everything was becoming a problem for me. The local charity that we've got here, which is now the Greetham Foundation, they have some housing for people living with dementia, and they said, look, why don't you come and have a look at one of these?
Yeah.
Now, we've gone from a 3-bedroom house to a 1-bedroom. It was a massive downsize. But one of the things, as soon as I walked in there, I said, look, there are walls in the wrong position here that my head can't get around. I had to open one door to close another door, and as soon as I walked in, it didn't feel right. So the director says, well, what would make it right? And I said, well, if you knock this wall down and take that wall out and move this door out the way, it would make a difference. He says, all right, we'll do it. And they did, at their cost. And I can't thank them enough for it, because moving here since then, I have not had a fall. So for 2 years now, I've not been to A&E, which is really great. So not only has it done that, but also then the saving for the NHS and everything, it makes a difference. You see, this is about preparing and the ability and what difference it can make. So yes, it's been a downsize, it's been a struggle. But anyway, they asked me to write about the move, living with dementia, and what it felt like. And I can tell you it was challenging. It was stressful, it was challenging. I really struggled with it, but doing it was the best thing I've ever done so far. So I wrote about this thing, but I just didn't stop, and I carried on writing. And before I knew it, I'd written 100 or just under 200 odd pages, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? So I thought, well, I'll publish it and let other people know that, help people to accept, because there's nothing really out there that takes you through those steps. There's a lot of different things. Wendy Mitchell was a great person, wrote a lot of information out there, but there's not really stuff that takes it from the very beginning, from your diagnosis. How does that feel? Why is there so much emotion involved in everything? And I just thought it's good to put that out there and let people know that, you've got to give each other a little bit of space to deal with all of this and everything, and just to how you can live with it the best you can. But it's mostly around, really, the thing I really want to drive home is the acceptance of what's coming, what's happening, but how to live with that at the same time.
I know you work with a lot of organisations like Tees, ESC, and then Ware Valley's NHS Trust. I think I've got all those right, haven't I? Yeah. From where you're sitting, what's one change you'd love to see in how services respond to people living with dementia?
I think we have to increase our knowledge. People think dementia because it is one word. It's like thinking cancer, but there's so many different types of cancer. And now we don't even refer to cancer anymore as such, do we? We refer to the type of cancer that it is. I would like to see people referring to dementia the same way. And I would like to see people having the understanding of how things differ. So if I went in there and I said, right, I've got Alzheimer's, okay, fine. What type of Alzheimer's? If I've got if I go in and say I've got frontotemporal dementia, then you're going to know, okay, there's a possibility of personality change, of aggression, so you know what you're getting into, you know what the challenges could be. I call them challenges, but they're not really. There's no better word for it, I suppose. But I think it comes down to, I would like to see education being changed, which is why I'm rewriting the education. I've sat down, I've got neuroscientists, I've got neurologists, psychologists, everything. And we're going through the ability, rather than, which is down your street, is rather than problem solution, we're now going to look at problem, but what's happening? What's happening in the brain at that time that's causing those problems or those challenges? And then how can you best care for them? Rather problem solution, problem think. Stop, think, and address the person rather than the situation. And I think that's going to hopefully change the way people view dementia. I mean, even many say that dementia is a group of symptoms. But then if you look at old age, you look at mild cognitive impairment, you look at depression, you put all of those symptoms side by side and along with dementia, and they're pretty much the same. So are we now saying that age and depression is dementia? It's not. So because of it, we can't say that dementia is a group of symptoms. It's a group of conditions. It's a brain disease. Unfortunately, when somebody is 80 years of age and they're starting to forget where they put things, that is a natural part of aging. Doesn't necessarily mean you have dementia. There's no disease there. So I think it's that better understanding, that better education is what I'd really love to see, especially from clinicians.
That sounds incredibly meaningful work. And I know with some of the conversations that we've had and some of the talks that I've heard you do, that you know, you're the right person to have in that position. You've got a wonderful kind of perspective on things. And that does sound right up my street. So I'll be looking out for that and getting on board with that in any way that I can to kind of re-educate. And it's always nice to hear from a training company. Yeah, more education is needed, 100%. But I think one of the reasons I started educating is because I had a passion for making sure people with greater level of, you know, that knowledge comes power kind of principle, but that knowledge comes well-being if applied appropriately. A couple more questions. That's okay, Michael. So when people read your book or hear you speak, what kind of feedback do you get that really stays with you?
First of all, it is the emotional side of things. How people respond to it is I don't intend for it to happen, but I very rarely give a talk where there's a dry eye. And I don't intend that to happen. I try to do them as buoyant as I possibly can, but I will speak openly and I won't hide behind anything of how I feel or what I'm struggling with, because I think people need to know. It comes down to education, doesn't it? They need to know what's going on, what really living with dementia looks like and how it feels. The first question you asked me. But it's also how people change. I get so many comments about how they've then changed the way they do things, how they've changed their training, for example, for clinicians, how they change the way they address people, their thought process with people living with dementia. Even I spoke to the British Association of Psychology the other day. I mean, these are the guys who actually diagnose you. And they were asking some of the most basic of questions. You think, well, these are the guys that are diagnosing me. And funny enough, I've just been invited to go back, so I can't have done that bad. So it's when they come back to you and think, I've never really thought about that, because they just see it as a clinical thing, and great. But behind that clinical is a person. And that's what you've got to really think about is the person.
Yeah.
And it comes back to empathy again, doesn't it? It's trying to have that empathy and trying to have that understanding that behind the diagnosis is the person. And I think that's what really drives home. And I think that's what people go away with. And I'm grateful for that when I see people saying, look, I've changed this. Or can I get your perspective on this one? And I think that really makes a difference. If one person can be diagnosed and get the information that they need the way they're supposed to do it, for me, I've done my job.
Yeah. And I say you are very inspiring, Michael. So yeah, and as you say, people don't always remember what you say, as they remember how you made them feel, and that's what you have to do when you're giving a talk, and being open, frank, vulnerable, but also passionate, I think is what allows people to try and move forwards. So there's a lot of people listening who might be at the very start of their journey. Either they've just had a diagnosis or someone they love has. If you could speak directly to them, what would you want them to know?
I often do one-to-one coaching with people newly diagnosed. The very first thing I always tell them, first of all, I'm very sorry that they've been diagnosed. I would not wish this on my worst of enemies, but at the stage that you are, it is not the end. So don't think that it is. Prepare for the future, yes. Be realistic. Look at your future. Look at what you want to do. Plan for that, but live now. Now is where you need to be, because now is where you're going to find your center, where you're going to be able to find your purpose. Yes, you're going to look back and you're going to be sad about what you look back, and that's okay. But try to be as positive. Give yourself time to accept what's happened. Give your loved ones time, because they're also going through this diagnosis with you. You're not alone. There's the whole core of people around you that stay with you. They living this as well. And also be mindful that it's harder for them as well. And you've got to give them space. So yes, you're going to be snappy. You've got your emotions to deal with. You've got your head to get straight, and it's hard. But just try and remember that the people around you are going through the same emotions, the same questions. But I've done something differently. Is this genetic? Is it not genetic? There's lots of things a lot of things, what I try to say, don't make any big decisions straight away. Look at what you want to do, try and adjust things, but be honest and open with your communication with your loved ones. How are you feeling? The more you can discuss, the more accepting you'll become, the easier it is to deal with if you're all on the same page. Where it becomes a problem is when one of you, and especially if it's you that's been diagnosed, does not want to accept what's coming. Or I have not got this, they've got it wrong. No, I'm fine. Then it's going to be difficult for everyone around you. And I've seen it. I've lived it. My mom was one of those. My dad did not accept what was coming. It really makes it harder than it needs to be. So I always try to advise, give yourself time to accept what's happening, but always live now. Live your life now. If now is what you want to do something and you're able to do it and you've got the money to do it, then go and do it. Because later it may be too late. And we don't know how quickly your dementia is going to progress. So don't think of it as being the end right now. You've still got at least a few years before you start to really see changes. So yeah, my advice is accept and live now.
And wise words again, Michael. Thank you so much. It's genuinely been an enjoyable conversation. Every time that we've met and had a bit of a chat, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I feel there's a wealth of more knowledge and stories and stuff that I'd love to share with you. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
So for any of you who've been watching, please check out Michael's book, Dementia, You Are Not Alone. We'll make sure there's links. And if somebody out there, if you think that Michael might be able to help you with some one-to-one consulting, again, you'll be able to find him, reach out in the show notes in the description. But otherwise, please like, comment and share this podcast if anything that we've gone through today has been useful or meaningful. Otherwise, thank you one last time, Michael, and I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers.